one of the things that I actually don't mention in the book, but always grabbed me, was a report in a paragraph in the Hope Consulting report of one of their focus group, where they interviewed a guy. I think his name was Mark Kay. That sort of sticks with me sometime later after reading it. And I think Mark Kay actually encapsulated the donor mentality pretty well, where he said, look, I don't do research because I know that charities are going to do some good. Where I put my time in research is things like products, like around buying a microwave. I'll do research, but I don't need to do the research for charities. And I think that actually captures the prevailing ethic right now among donors. And part of my book is really, I would say, a plea to the donor community to rethink it. All charities are not alike. They're good ones, they're bad ones, there's a lot in the middle. We got to get money to the best in breed so that they survive and that the others don't.
With little accountability or measure of effectiveness, With Charity for All author Ken Stern looks at the world of nonprofits on Afterwards, Sunday night at 9, part of Book TV, this weekend on C-SPAN 2.
Republican of Pennsylvania, chair of the Mental Health Caucus. He's also chairman of the Energy and Commerce Subcommittee on Oversight and Investigation. He's serving in his 6th term, represents the 18th District of Pennsylvania, and we're here to talk about federal mental health programs. So let's just begin with, how do you define mental illness?
Well, we would do it according to diagnostic terminology. Technically, that's what it is, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. The key about this is understanding that mental illness is there's a general, genuine, diagnosable, and treatable conditions. More and more we're finding out they have a neurological base. There was a study that came out just a week ago in Lancet that said that several of the diagnoses, such as schizophrenia, attention disorder, bipolar, and other illnesses, actually found a common genetic link. We are learning more and more about this all the time, although I must admit mental health, mental disorder, mental illness research is far behind other areas. It just hasn't been funded very well at all. So we have a long way to go. If we look at such things as cancer, where now people can say you can identify your genetic type and then set medications specifically for your genetic type, my hope is sometime in the near future we're there for mental illness issues as well, so that those diseases, the systems, we can also target medications and other treatments specifically for that.
You served as a psychologist for 30 years. What sort of federal programs are there for mental health patients?
Well, there's a number of programs through there. There's things through the Department of Defense, through TRICARE, through the VA system that's specifically run totally by the federal health system. There's also federal dollars that come onto states. There's federal research dollars to the National Institutes of Mental Health and IMH. SAMHSA for substance abuse and mental health. And there's a lot of other things through there. In fact, we don't really know them. Admit. One of the things I'm doing through my subcommittee is doing an audit of every single federal dollar, where it comes from and where it goes. We don't really know all that yet. And one of the things that I consider extremely important is to find out how much is eaten up in Washington, D.C. or in capitals of states, and how much really gets down to the patient level. To me, it is not an effective use of taxpayer dollars if we find it's eating up a lot of administrative costs and programs that really are not found to help with treatment. Parents and communities are deeply concerned about not being able to treat people with mental disorders.
Your Oversight Subcommittee has a hearing today. C-SPAN's going to be covering it this morning. Raise the curtain for us. What's the purpose of the hearing?
Well, this is called After Newtown. And the issue here is to really help members of Congress understand from families themselves the deep concerns they have about the relationship between severe mental illness and violence. We're going to have 3 parents there. Sadly, one of those parents' son committed suicide. We have another one whose son she's deeply concerned about the threats he makes against the family and others, so much so that the family members have to go lock themselves in the car and hide the kitchen knives, etc. We have another one who's a father who's going to be talking about problems he has with his son. He's written a book called Crazy, that the difficulties he has in dealing with his son. I want people to put a face on this. Sadly, so much of what has happened with mental illness over the years, it's been a source of jokes, of embarrassment, of stigma. People have not wanted to talk about it. And my sense is what Washington and states have done with this is sometimes they've just thrown money at programs. And I believe they misled themselves into thinking that because they did something, they did the right thing. And it has not always been the right thing. Many times it's actually been maintaining stigmas, very weak levels of research. I mean, so weak to the extent that you look at something like cancer.
Weak levels of research?
Research. The National Health, for example, spends about $5 billion+ per year on cancer. That's important. But maybe $100 million a year on severe mental illness and violence. Now, by comparison, about 20,000 people per year die of cancer. Many have it, many are cured. That's wonderful. By comparison, 38,000 suicides per year in this country. And plus, on top of that, attempts, and on top of that, maybe some automobile accidents related to suicides. So there's a wide range here that we're not addressing this problem.
Do you agree with this headline in the Washington Post this morning when it comes to mental health programs? GOP fears fallout of cuts under this sequestration if you keep it in place.
In the area of mental health?
Yeah.
Well, I think what we can do, and this is one of the reasons I've called for this audit of systems, is where does the money go? If it is to some programs where we really see it helps, for example, in rural communities, their access is so low that perhaps in urban areas maybe they have 50% of the available providers. And in rural areas, they have a 90% problem. I mean, only 10% of the need is there. If these dollars are not getting to these communities to actually provide this treatment, that's a problem. We look at areas in some programs, for example, SAMHSA, which has some good programs for treatment. That's a substance abuse and mental health services agency. But in areas, quite frankly, I really question what it's doing. Why are we spending $22,500 on a painting of people sitting on a rock? I don't get it. Why are we spending money on a staff bonding thing, videos of $80,000 spending on that? I don't get it. We are not here to help people in Washington feel good or to fund the paintings of something they like. Get those dollars either back to where it needs to be with treating patients or cut that out of your budget. Or send it over to another budget where it can be helpful. Again, National Institutes of Mental Health budget, a little over $1 billion per year. NIH, Institute of Health budget about $31 billion per year. We're simply not putting money effectively where it's needed.
According to the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Administration, for its fiscal year 2011 budget, its total budget about $3.4 million. Children mental health services. 3.4 billion?
Their total budget.
Oh, excuse me, million, sorry.
Okay.
3.4 million, their total budget. Children mental health services, about 121,000, and the mental health block grants to states, about 420,000. Do you see that the difference between their total budget and what they're sending to the states and for these mental health services, that's not adequate?
Oh, well, actually their budget's in the billions, but that amount of money that's going for children's services and to the states, it's not adequate. And again, you look at the amount of money that is spent of that could be eaten up in one large city, and it is not it's simply not appropriate. But we want to go through all these agencies and find out where it is. Again, you look at things with what does HHS have, Health and Human Services? What does Department of Defense have? Department of Defense is spending a lot of money because of their suicide awareness programs, and they recognize that a lot of soldiers. Suicide is even a higher rate of suicide than combatants, and working with families. Okay, but those need to be under scrutiny. But a lot of the other agencies, too, I want to find out why is it so little out of all the money they have? Why isn't more actually going to programs? And then even so, where does that money go when we don't have enough providers, especially with children? There's such a shortage of providers for children. And then you hear from these parents that say they got a 12 or 13-year-old already out of control. When I wrote a book about this a number of years ago called The Angry Child, I wrote it based upon stories and my experiences working with families where parents literally said, I'm scared to death of my kid. I remember I once had a child come to see me, a 4-year-old, who while I was talking to the parents, he was in the waiting room, he was picking up a chair in the waiting room and smashing it into the wall. And, of course, we got him right. But this is the level some parents live with, this fearful response of their children, their anger, their rage, their illness is so out of control. They don't know what to do, and there's, quite frankly, not enough people to help them.
What about the numbers? I mean, according to SAMHSA, adult mental health in the United States, 45.6 million with mental illness, 11 million with serious mental illness, 8 million had substance abuse disorder, 8.5 million had serious thoughts of suicide, and about 32 million received mental health services. And then when you look at children, 2 million had major depressive episodes. About 3 million youths received counseling for treatment. And most common reason for youth mental health services is depression. So what resources do adults and children have?
Well, it's frighteningly low what we have here. About 20% of people in America in any given year will have a diagnosable mental disorder. Now, that doesn't mean it's severe. It could be some mild depression, be some acute anxiety. But nonetheless, we can provide some help for that. And in most cases, they may not be able to get that help, or they don't seek it. If you look at severe mental illness, here's a frightening statistic. From the time symptoms begin to appear to the time the person really starts to get help, the average amount of wait is 110, 112 weeks. 2 years. Now, that's for multiple reasons. Sometimes the people themselves don't recognize they have the symptoms, whether it's the family or the individual. Sometimes they try to get access they can. Sometimes it's insurance problems. Sometimes they say, well, let's hold off. It's not so bad until things really do get bad. But that range still goes from maybe 40 weeks or so up to like 3 years' time, wait time, not getting those services. And that's all part of what we have to investigate why.
I want to get our callers involved. Real quick, though, first, what are some warning signs?
Well, warning signs, I think, when you find that someone, sadness or depression is beginning to get in the way of their everyday functions, their worries, anxieties, sometimes you may notice a child who is socially very, very awkward, not talking about just a little bit shy, but socially awkward, teased, doesn't get it, doesn't form emotional bonds with other people. Certainly if you start to see signs, too, where someone is hearing voices, if someone's rage is so out of control the family is frightened, any of those things are reasons to start getting some help. Talk to the pediatrician, talk to the doctor, and begin to get the referral process moving forward.
All right, first phone call comes from Anupa in Washington, D.C. Democratic caller. Hi there.
Hi. Can you hear me?
We can. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on this call. Congressman, I have a question and a comment. As a person with a psychiatric history, I'm a little concerned in terms of your panel that you're not there are no panelists who are people with psych histories who can talk about these issues from their own perspectives. I am one of those people who has had, who I guess you could qualify as someone with a severe mental illness, but, you know, I was able to end up going to law school and establish a career for myself. And I think that by not having other views on this panel, it could lead to an increase in stigma and a reluctance for people to get care. And then my other point is that my concern in the way that we are looking at mental health services is taking it from the perspective of inpatient hospitalization versus looking at community-based care and peer services.
Okay.
So,
Anupa, I'm going to have the Congressman respond to those two things.
What she's describing here is part of some people in America that believe in such things as the peer services. But the peer services work very well with such things as alcohol, drug abuse, et cetera. And let's face it, when we're talking about severe mental illness and violence, very often that nexus of the two is a high for someone committing acts of violence. But the other issue, too, with regard to why we're not having someone with severe mental illness on our panel, because that's not what this panel is about. This panel is to help members of Congress be aware of what it is like for families. Now, we're not ruling out that if people with mental illness come speak to us. Absolutely not. I mean, that's important. But today, I want members of Congress to hear from parents. And I also, since we're talking about severe mental illness that relates to violence, I'm not going to bring a convicted felon out of prison to come and talk about why they kill people. We're just not going to do that here. That's a dangerous situation. I'm not going to do that. There's also important points to understand that, I mean, these are going to be very moving stories we're going to hear from parents. And these are the people that make decisions for their teen kids. Remember, the folks who have committed these mass crimes, generally their symptoms appear between 14 and 25. And at that young age, I think we would all acknowledge as parents that we don't think that a child of that age can make rational decisions for themselves, period. They can't have a bank account. They can't drive a car. There's so many other things they're not allowed to do. But what happens is, for example, in states of Pennsylvania, a 14-year-old is allowed to make a decision of whether or not they're going to be forced to get treatment. Now, that is important because I don't think a 14-year-old is capable of making that judgment, period, let alone a 14-year-old with severe mental illness who may themselves be hearing voices, may have tremendous mood swings, may have trouble understanding some of the problems they have. They don't have that kind of insight, period. And I look upon this also as a professional. As a psychologist, I have ethical obligations to not do harm to someone. And I'm not going to bring someone on just for the sake of saying, well, here's a person with mental illness, let's put them on parade. I'm not going to do that. Noting also that a person with severe mental illness, schizophrenia, or some psychotic disorder, I'm not going to do something that's going to set them off, quite frankly. It is extremely important. So I'm not going to have someone do it for the sake of saying, here's someone who's had this. Now, I understand people have recovered. Absolutely. People have made great strides with this. And we will have them on. But today is about parent stories.
On Twitter, Sea of Tranquility, how many mental health doctors do we have in the United States? Doctors that have gone to medical school or other type of docs?
There is, I don't know the exact statistic, but I know your psychiatrists, psychologists are the ones that are trained to the doctoral level for this. I just read an article that said there's a severe shortage of psychiatrists and psychologists as well. And if you're talking with people who deal with children and adolescents, it is even much, much smaller. For example, males who work with children, many times teenage boys do well working with a male therapist or female, whatever it is, a high shortage there. It is extremely small. I think perhaps only like one psychiatrist per 800 or 900 patients. You can't handle a load like that and provide adequate services. So there is a severe shortage. Lots of reasons for that. Many times psychologists, psychiatrists recognize the reimbursement rates are so low in some of these areas. The insurance companies won't provide the services for them. But even on the federal level, we have a shortage. 4 years ago, when we passed the Mental Health Parity Act, which was to require insurance companies to provide coverage, we are still waiting for the federal regulations to tell us how to make this work. 4 years we've been waiting. Recently I've asked Secretary of Health and Human Services, Secretary Sebelius, to respond to this more, asked the administration to move to advance this so we could do more, but we do have a shortage.
We'll go to Jeff in Bremen, Indiana, independent caller.
Hi, how you doing, Doctor?
Hi, Jeff.
Good morning.
Doctor, I want to tell you about something. I spent 4.5 years in Vietnam in the Force Recon Unit. And when we came back, all I had was people calling us baby killers and everything else. And now I'm 64 years old, and I think back about my past, and I'm very proud about my past. But I don't like President Obama. I do not like him. It ain't about a racist thing. But I just got a check in the mail yesterday for $10,000 for my service over there. So how can you not like somebody like this?
I'm not sure what you're asking there, but let me just say in terms of a segue into the issue of people who have served their country. That I work also in the Navy. I'm a Navy officer, work at Walter Reed, Bethesda, with post-traumatic stress disorder, soldiers and veterans. And there have been recent things in the news suggesting perhaps that some of those may have been prone to violence. That is not associated with PTSD. But there are, however, a recent shooting of a Navy SEAL by someone with PTSD. This brings up the issue that we misunderstand mental illness so much that we toss these terms around, and I think that ends up being a stigma of dangerousness. The vast majority of people with mental illness are not dangerous. They are not violent. 20% of the population may have a diagnosable mental illness, but even a tiny fraction of that may end up with violence. And I never want people to think, I'm not going to get help because I'm worried that I'll be labeled this. What we have to think is these diagnostic labels are keys, not locks. They open a door to get help, and there's lots of different kinds of help, but we also have to make sure that help is effective. We have to make sure, for example, with people with various disorders, it isn't just sitting down and talking. It isn't just expressing feelings. We found that many of those treatments, quite frankly, are not that helpful, specifically for people with severe mental illness. Working with someone with a diagnosis of schizophrenia or severe disorder, having them be in touch more with their feelings or push their feelings out more to the open is actually more of a problem. What is called cognitive behavior therapy, a psychosocial therapy, where you're specifically working with someone to understand how to control, how to be aware of their thought process, is much more effective. We do a lot of effective work with soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines with PTSD. It is treatable, and I certainly hope one of the things that comes out for the audience